Today I am talking to Zeeba Khan, Ayurvedic clinician and meditation teacher from Singapore. Hello, Zeeba, and very, very welcome to our podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Nicoletta.
You're very welcome. So lovely to get to meet you and chat for a little bit on our podcast. Let's start by finding out a little bit about you, Zeeba. Who are you? How was your journey in life so far? And what are you doing these days?
Well, I am, I think, like all of us, on a soul's journey. I have been extremely fortunate in my life, and especially when it comes to the realm of careers. I've really had the opportunity to experience all the careers that I wanted to experience.
So
I
lovely.
began modeling at age 13, and I eventually became a television show host. I was a radio DJ for a while. And then I realized that I was actually speaking other people's words. And I was not speaking my own thoughts, my own ideas, but rather reading a script, essentially.
Mhm.
So I decided that the real power actually lie in the message itself, rather than in the delivery of the message. So I decided to go into journalism. And I was very happy there for a while. And I decided to then go back into academia and become a university professor because I wanted to teach. So I was a professor of intercultural communication for some years. And then my son was born. And so I decided to give up the career that I loved, which was a super difficult decision for me to make because I was extremely ambitious, extremely career oriented, extremely goal driven. And I decided to give it all up to raise this little being who couldn't speak. And I really felt that I did not have a maternal instinct. And so that was a huge leap for me to make. I was not one of those women who all her life knew that she wanted to grow up and someday have children of her own. So when I gave up my career, which is something that was tested and proven to be good at, to stay at home with this little one, I really didn't anticipate what would come next. I knew it was going to be difficult. I just felt like it was the right decision for me to make, and I knew it was going to be hard. From there, I stayed at home with him for some time and slowly started returning to my roots. I moved back to Asia from Los Angeles. And I think being back in Asia, I just became closer to family and re-explored my roots. And Ayurveda is something that we have been practicing for forever in our family. Being of Indian heritage, it's just part of the culture. You don't think about it. You fall ill, you go to the kitchen, right? You fall ill, you take certain herbs or spices. You don't rush to the doctor. First you try to naturally take care of things at home. You don't feel good, your grandmother has some concoction, some remedy for you that she knows. And so I think being back in Asia allowed me to reconnect to those strong roots of mine. And I realized how much I love it. And so I decided to go back and get my degree in Ayurveda and start practicing it professionally. So that is what I do now.
Maybe this is your true calling, Zeeba.
I think it is because I have always loved being in service to other people. And when I was teaching during my professorship, to me, that was the best aspect of it, was to serve others and to help them change their lives through inspiration. And when I was teaching intercultural communication, it was bringing different people together, people who had strife or who perceived the other group as threatening, came together in harmony. And I loved that. And through Ayurveda, again, it's serving other people, it's inspiring them, it's helping the world, it's creating harmony, both within my patient, as well as between my patient and how they interact with their own world. They show up differently, they're different people, they feel better about themselves because they're healthier.
Absolutely. You are such a great storyteller. It's captivating to follow you. I'm looking at your story from a bit of distance, obviously, because I'm not involved myself. And what I'm hearing, it's so amazing. You talk about the journey that is not happening just in the physical world, where you're moving yourself to the geography of this space, from Los Angeles to back to India, to your roots. But it's also the search of the soul, it's the spiritual journey that you're exploring throughout all of these challenges that you're facing and searches, inner searches. And it's so beautiful that from the career, I mean, starting in acting and modeling and then being an university professor, it could be probably the highlight of your career, the highlight of life, of your professional life for many of us. But then you're going further because you feel invited to search for more. And now, naturally, through all of these learnings, you're taking these teachings into the world and you're helping others and you're a service of others. Such a beautiful purpose, full of meaning, I would say, from where I'm sitting. I wonder, where is happiness in all of this? How was your relationship with happiness throughout life and throughout this journey? And where are you finding yourself today?
My relationship with happiness for most of my life was always through this avenue of external validation. I was only as good as others said I was. And if I was told that I was good, then I could be happy.
That's the program. This is what we all have to face, isn't it?
And it took me many of the same kinds of life experiences to awaken myself and to realize that I must give myself that which I am seeking from others. I was always true to my values, but sometimes I would find that I would bend my values in order to please others.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think as women, we are, and I think by and large, this is in many cultures, we are taught to please others from a very young age. We're taught to please our parents. We're taught to please our fathers. We're taught to please our husbands. It's always about pleasing, and very often pleasing other men. And we're told, not directly, but very subtly most often, that if we have a differing perspective, it's better to keep quiet to maintain the peace than to speak up and either have an argument with someone or challenge the status quo or upset the man of the house, whomever that might be, or upset the matriarch. It's better to not challenge authority and power, but it's better to keep quiet so that you can be liked and you can be harmonious and you can be peaceful and you can be the woman who is constantly giving to others, and that is our role. And so it took me many years to realize that is no longer the life I wanted to lead, and that there's a very big difference between self-love and selfishness. And I think I was so afraid for so long to be selfish that I overgave and I accommodated where I should not have at my own expense. Yeah. And so when I started becoming more authentic to myself, then my life started to shift and I began attracting different things in my life, better people, more respectful people, people who are also authentic to what it is that they were pursuing, and they were unapologetic about it. And that's not to say that they were rude, but they were just determined in knowing who they wanted to be and what they were going after. in a very gentle sort of way, not in an ambition, I will step all over you to attain my goal if I need to kind of way, but in a very gentle, embracing sort of way. And it is through that approach to my life, Nicoletta, that I think I really found my community of people.
You came back home to
Yes.
yourself, home to your community where you belong. It's a beautiful, wonderful journey. I feel that you're touching on some very sensitive topics, in particular, what us women have endured throughout the centuries and millennia, and how the world was organized, how the power was distributed towards the physical abilities, and how it's now shifting in a different direction where we start to have an equal place in the dialogue. And it takes time, and I see that all over the world, in all cultures, the shift is happening a bit timidly at the beginning because of that fear that you talk about, which is ingrained in our minds. Since we are very little, we are taught to be afraid of the ones that have control over us. And the way you end it, it's very positive and uplifting, and it's full of hope. And I feel the same. I find myself, I resonate with what you're talking about. This journey back to the self, to the true self, rather than the personality, what we've been programmed to be, what we've been made to think about ourselves, that false sense of identity with all of these roles that we embrace and all of these ideas that become our core beliefs that are not really serving us. Such a beautiful way of sharing your inner journey. So you're talking a little bit about your challenges. You're talking about what helps you to find a sense of peacefulness and wholeness in a way. How is your relationship with happiness these days? Where do you find yourself these days? How do you feel about life, about yourself, about people, about the world?
I think as I continue to evolve, Nicoletta, I think that one area that I need to continue practicing is acceptance. Acceptance of myself and acceptance of others equally. That just like I am on this path where I want to leave this physical plane being as evolved as I can possibly be, I must accept that there are people in my life who are not at all interested in pursuing that same journey for themselves. And it does not help with me trying to push them or persuade them or encourage them or beat my head against the wall questioning why I have not been able to get through to them yet, either through words or through my actions. Why are they not inspired by me the way that my clients are? Why?
What a wonderful question.
Yeah, because they're just not interested.
They are not ready. They are not ready. They are somewhere else. They don't get it. Their level of consciousness is somewhere different, isn't it? I face the same with family members, with friends.
Yeah, and sometimes they fall out of our lives as well. You know, our relationship with them shifts as we evolve, and that's okay. Because again, going back to my upbringing, to my cultural upbringing, you know, again, as women, we're taught that you can't let relationships go. If you lose a relationship, somehow you failed or you did something wrong or bad and you're being punished, because for us that connection is so important. Yeah. So when we lose that tie or that bond breaks, then there's almost a sense of isolation, even if we have others. The severing of that bond can be quite disturbing for us psychologically and emotionally. It can rattle us.
course.
internally. Yeah. So I think that giving up judgment of others and trying to persuade them to do what I think is best for them, what I think is right for them, has been a growing point for me. And the more that I am able to accept who they are, the more that I am able to flow with who they want to be, I find that I'm happier, Nicoletta.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm more accepting of them. It's not as disturbing. And I can almost put a distance between myself and them. It's almost like I'm viewing them through a window where I can see them, and yet they're at this distance. I'm still protected from them, from their energy, from their words, from their judgments, from their non-acceptance of me. And so that has helped me tremendously. Just to use that vision sometimes of, imagining that they're speaking to me through a window. I feel protected, I feel safe and less attacked, if at all, by them. But I think that, learning to accept other people and how they want to be and who they want to be has brought me a lot of peace in my life and therefore happiness.
Oh, I truly relate to that because, in a way, acceptance is liberating, isn't it? It's giving us the freedom that we need because we get hooked into so many expectations about ourselves, about our close ones, about the people in general, the people we interact with, and even about the world, the systems of the world, the institutions that can become a little bit oppressive, if not more than that. And all of these expectations, what they do, they become prisons. They keep us stuck into wanting to change ourselves, changing others, changing the world. But we can only work on ourselves. So you've described so lovely how you're doing it yourself, how you've done it yourself, and how you freed yourself from all of this suffering, I would say, in trying to inspire others, to help others, like it's part of our agenda. Gosh, I've been doing this for my whole life, and I still surprise myself wanting that someone close to me is listening a bit more, is inviting a different kind of perspective, is opening towards a different opportunity, because I can feel the suffering in them. I can see the blockage, I can see the barrier, but they don't see it. So it's hard to accept, but sooner or later, we have to surrender to the true nature of our reality. We can't really change others. We can't really change the entire world. We can contribute a little bit, as much as they allow us to do it. So lovely. It's all very deep and profound with you, Zeeba. Now, you've done a lot of work on yourself, and it's clear that you speak from a place of understanding yourself, understanding where you start and where you might end. Although you're still getting to know yourself, you're still working on discovering yourself. I'd like to move a little bit the conversation towards the area of suffering and healing, because this is at the core of your work, mine as well. So we've been through this journey, and we are now sharing our learnings with the others, sharing how we managed to turn this pain into healing. Can you maybe share with us what's at the core of your philosophy in professional identity? What do you think about suffering and illness, physical illness, mental, spiritual, emotional? And how do you embrace healing? How do you see healing working from the perspective of your work?
So, as you very graciously introduced me, I am an Ayurvedic clinician. And for your listeners and your viewers who don't know, Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old ancient Indian science of healing, of health and of well-being. And so the biggest contribution of Ayurveda is how not to fall ill, how not to develop disease, how to prevent from being sick. But in the event that you do become sick, Ayurveda also prescribes treatments for all of the different ailments. And this goes back 5,000 years ago. There's treatments for physical conditions, hypothyroidism, for diabetes. 5,000 years ago, we knew of these conditions. But Ayurveda also talks about healing on different levels. So we have the physical level, but we also have the mental level, the emotional level, we have the spiritual level, and we also have the level of relationship or community support from others. And so healing is never done in an isolated vacuum. It always requires one other person at the very minimum, because then we feel this sense of connection. And connection is very important for healing, because we do make mistakes, Nicoletta, and we do fall. And sometimes we feel that we can't get up, or we don't want to get up, or it's so much easier to revert to our pre-programmed conditioning, to those patterns that we've always known all our lives. Yes, we know they're bad for us. Yes, we know they don't serve us well, but they're familiar. And the brain doesn't necessarily like what is good for us. It likes what's familiar to us.
Right.
And when we have support, and when we have the support of another individual, that loving, guiding, supportive, nurturing voice, then we feel like, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can overcome this ailment. Yes, I can overcome this trauma. Yes, I can move through this grief of having lost someone I love, or having lost a relationship that I really wanted. But this aspect of community and support and wholeness is central to Ayurveda, because it expands on the concept of everything being integrated. Our mind, our body, our spirit, our sense of community is all one and the same. If I am not well mentally or emotionally, it will eventually manifest in my body, no doubt. How it will manifest, Ayurveda says, well, it will manifest based on your dosha, on your mind, body, spirit composition. And so if you are predominantly vata dosha, you're going to develop neurological issues, colon issues, you'll have tics, twitches, muscle spasms, varicose veins, you'll have development of Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. If you are predominantly pitta dosha, which has more fire in their bodies, they are more prone to stomach issues, gastrointestinal issues, ulcers, hyperacidity, skin problems, rashes, irritations. They have very hot tempers. So they see a lot of relationships in their lives dissolve, because they tend to be extremely bossy and arrogant and aggressive in their manner of speech when they're out of balance. And for the kapha dosha people, they're more earthy. And so they have a propensity towards digesting the least amount of food in the maximum amount of time, and therefore they're prone to gaining weight very quickly, and they don't like to move so much. So they tend to put on weight very quickly. They're prone to blood pressure issues, cardiovascular issues, stagnation of mucus or lubrication in the body. They have buildup of earwax, for example. Their hearing will go, their eyesight will go very quickly. And we all have all three of these doshas, by the way. We all have vata, we all have pitta, we all have kapha. It's just a matter of which one is primary, secondary, and tertiary in our body, and in what ratio we have them, because our goal is to get them in balance. And balance means 30% vata, 35% pitta, and 35% kapha. And this is kind of the yogic balance, Nicoletta, that if we are here, then we feel like we're thriving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And then we're able to show up in our community and contribute very effectively.
It's also interesting. Thank you so much, Zeeba, for giving us examples and making it so easy to understand. I had a little bit of contact with Ayurvedic practitioners before, and I've read myself a little bit about it because I'm aware that in India, most of the health system is Ayurvedic still. I found it very, very appealing to me in a time when I was very ill myself, when I've been through my cancer journey. And I wanted to look beyond the conventional medicine system into a more holistic perspective. So thank you so much for giving us examples and explaining so wonderfully what it is, so people understand how it manifests and how you actually bring yourself into a state of yoga. I mean, we should explore that further. So now, if we know that, if we know where we should be, how do we bring ourselves back into harmony? How is it that you work? What is it that you do with people? What is it that you teach them? What's the way back into overall well-being, into the wholeness of our being?
So the first thing I do is I diagnose their dosha. And this gives me only a starting point. You know, when you know your dosha, it is a phenomenal roadmap because you learn so much about yourself and you come to understand yourself so much better. And you also learn the imbalances that you're prone to. Something that's very important to keep in mind, Nicoletta, is that just because we have a predisposition towards a disease does not mean it's a predestination. Yeah, just because we have a genetic
Mutation.
Or genetic mutation for something does not mean that it will necessarily manifest. Yeah, if we have a SNP, for example, the question is why? Why is it that last year when I came to you, if you're my GP, suppose, why is it that last year when I came to you, my blood sugar was fine, but 1 year later I come into your office, you draw blood, you examine the labs, and you say, Zeeba, you're diabetic. What happened? What happened to my body in the last year to where things shifted and suddenly I've developed this disease? And so if you know your family history, and if you know your dosha, it's super empowering because you can begin taking action today to minimize your chances of developing certain illnesses. Just because your parents had something, or your siblings, or your aunts and uncles and grandparents, does not mean that you will develop that same thing at a 100% rate. Absolutely not. And as we all know, stress accounts for 80 to 90% of all illness. So lifestyle is a huge factor in the imbalances that develop in our mind and in our physical body. The other thing I do, Nicoletta, is I listen to my patients. I have a very extensive and comprehensive intake form. And I ask them all kinds of questions about their sleep patterns, diet, hydration, allergies, stress level, sources of stress, whether they pray, whether they meditate. If so, how often? Is it a regular practice? Is it a couple of times a week? What do they love doing in life? And how often do they do them? And there's a big discrepancy I always find between, I love doing these things. Well, how often do you do them? Once a year. So then you have all the stress. On a scale of 1 to 10, you said your stress is at a 10. And once a year, you're taking time out to do something you love. How rejuvenating do you think that is to you? How revitalizing is it to your cells, to your tissues, muscles, organs, right?
Very nice.
And then, yeah, I mean, it's very damaging. And I'll also ask them about why they want to regain their health. because we have to have a purpose to cause us to return when we've fallen off our healing track. Yeah, we have to have something that brings us back, and that purpose must be greater than ourselves. That purpose has to be something like, I want to be there when my child gets married, or I want to outlive my grandfather who died at age 53, or it has to be something bigger than ourselves. It has to be an attachment to something outside of ourselves. Otherwise, it's very easy for us to give up when things get difficult. And it's just fascinating to me how much grief and trauma people have experienced, especially post-COVID, and how much grief I think people experience during COVID with respect to loss, Nicoletta. Loss of things that never happened, and loss of things that were scheduled to happen but never did. There's a sense of lost time. We all lost 2.5 years of our lives, and we feel robbed. And for many of us, our loved ones passed, and we were not able to be there for them. And so there's that sense of guilt and shame and regret and remorse along with the grief. And we're all having to process that. And listening is a huge component for me in my intake, because our doctors don't listen to us in Western medicine. When is the last time you went to see a Western doctor and they asked you about your trauma?
Never.
What happened to you in your childhood? Right? What was the event that occurred just before you began developing asthma? Yeah, because there are triggers for everything. Unless we're born with these conditions, there's a reason that we developed them. And sometimes it's multiple reasons. But it's very important for me to gain knowledge from my clients by listening to them. Sometimes they give me the answers. Yeah, they have the answers within themselves.
Yes.
They were unaware.
Yeah, they create their own treatment plan with you, obviously. You're just guiding them.
Yeah. And so I can tell them which herbs to take and which practices to do, and how to surrender and build resilience and overcome trauma and move through grief, and how to reset their nervous system and operate more from a place of the parasympathetic nervous system of rest, relax, digest. But ultimately, they have to want to do it, because studies have also shown that if you do not believe the treatment will work,
Not
it
gonna
won't.
work. Yeah. Yeah, placebo is still very important. Yeah, we call it placebo in conventional medicine, but it's a bit more than that.
Yeah. And so there's also, if you have resistance to treatment, then it won't work. And it's not because the treatment's not effective, it's because you have resistance within you.
You're rejecting it, isn't it? You're not getting involved with it. You're not asking for it. You're not participating, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So in creating these treatment plans, you look at the whole person, at their physical body, their soul, their mind, the emotions. Maybe you can share with us how you employ meditation. How is meditation part of all of this? And what's your favorite meditation style? Or would you advise maybe our listeners and watchers to start practicing themselves, to open a little bit more towards this ancient practice that's been always there, but we kind of disconnected from it with our civilization process?
My goodness, there's so many different styles of meditation. And again, from a purely Ayurvedic paradigm, if we look at the three doshas, we will see that certain meditation styles suit particular doshas more than others. So let me give you an example. Our Vata dosha people tend to be very flighty, fidgety, very creative people. Their mind is always racing. They have great ideas, but they don't finish anything because they get distracted easily. So for our Vata dosha people, a calming meditation that activates the parasympathetic nervous system is very effective. And so that is left nostril breathing. So many people are familiar with alternate nostril breathing called Nadi Shodhan. But here, and Nadi Shodhan balances both the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It balances both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. That's great for another dosha type. Now, anyone can do any style of meditation, but there are certain styles of meditation that are more effective for the dosha type. So for Vata dosha people, if we close our right nostril and inhale and exhale only through our left nostril, it will relax us, it will calm us down. And therefore it'll bring that excess energy down and it'll be balancing. So that's what we need. If
So
we are,
interesting.
yeah, no, anyone can do it and it's beneficial because you're activating your relaxation mode. But for our Kapha dosha people, who are the people I mentioned earlier, who tend to put on weight easily, they tend to not like to move, they don't like to exercise, they tend to be a little bit lazy and sluggish, they love to sleep.
Yeah.
Our Kapha dosha people, you give them 10 hours of sleep, they'll take it. They can sleep anywhere, right? In deep, deep sleep. For them, they would need to be in balance. They would need something invigorating, right? Something that's going to wake them up and energize them. So for them, if they do right nostril breathing, which is Surya Anulom Vilom, then they get more energy. They build up the heat in their body. And so they increase their fire, and now they feel that they can transform that into energy in the outer world. And they begin, hitting their to-do list and knocking things out for the day. For our Pitta dosha people, deep breathing is very effective. If they can focus their mind, these are our fiery people who tend to get angry very quickly. If they can focus their mind on a mantra, which traditionally is a Sanskrit word or a saying, but it does not need to be Sanskrit. It can be anything that brings you peace in any language, from any religion. It can be a line from your favorite poem or book or song. It can be a single word, like beach, mountain, anything that brings you peace. There's no right and there's no wrong when it comes to meditating and to selecting a mantra for yourself. Anything is good for you. Any meditation, even if it's only for 2 minutes, is beneficial. It's better than doing nothing. And so for our Pitta dosha people, when they can focus on their breath, they tend to have very shallow breathing. They'll breathe just to, the mid-chest. Their breath does not go deep into their diaphragm and their belly. So if they slow down their breath and focus on a mantra, or focus on the movement of their breath, moving deep into their abdomen, expanding their rib cage, stretching their collarbones, and then exhaling, and that process going in reverse, that helps to balance them. In Ayurveda, we say that prayer is us talking to a higher power, and meditation activates our intuition, our third eye, our ajna, which is, the chakra between the brows. And we have 2 physical eyes with which we see the outside, the external world. But this third eye is actually for us to see within and to go within. And that is what meditation allows us to do. Meditation is us listening to this voice of intuition, this voice of a higher power. In Sufism, there's a famous saying that the voice of the ego yells, and yells many times, but the voice of God whispers but once.
Lovely.
So we speak quiet. We must be still enough internally to where we can hear this voice when it comes. Otherwise, we'll miss it.
True. I read somewhere something on the same lines. Your prayer is your attempt to talk into God, and your intuition is how God is talking back to you, or how God is responding back to you. So lovely. Thank you so much for being so diligent and sharing what kind of meditation practice every single one of us, based on our particularities, can embrace. It's also so great. I wish I could ask another 100 questions and be here all day, but it will be all night for you. So I need to be sensitive and considerate. What has been the highlight of your life, professional, personal, anything so far, Zeeba?
Hands down, the birth of my lovely son. He's an old soul, this one, and it's just been an honor and a privilege being his mother. Yeah, he's taught me so much through causing me to grow. I mean, I am a woman that I never imagined I would be, because I didn't know it was possible. But in being his mother, through the journey of being his mother, he's shown me things about myself that I did not even know existed. And good things as well as bad things. And he has also been a mirror to me. And I've always given him enough freedom to speak up, so long as he's respectful. And he has called me out on things.
Oh.
So it's not okay for me to do that, but you can do that. And I'm unaware that I'm doing it. Yeah. And so we have to change then, or I choose to change rather, because I don't want to be a hypocrite. And I read somewhere many years ago that the best thing you can be for your children is a demonstration. And going back to the beginning of a conversation, I want to inspire him. I want to serve him as best as I can. And so me evolving and being the best woman that I can be also allows me to be the best mother that I can be for him. And it's all right for him to see my imperfections. It's all right for him to call me out on things, because he sees that, again, there's that element of self-acceptance, that we don't have to be perfect to love ourselves and to accept ourselves and to be happy. We can be imperfect and still be happy. There's a famous Zen Buddhist saying, "You're perfect just the way you are, and you can use a little improvement." So you don't have to wait until you're that perfect being to have that happiness. You can have it here and now by, as you said very wisely, by accepting the reality that is in front of you, whether you like it or not. For the time being, for the now, it is reality. It'll be different some time from now. It won't last forever, because everything is impermanent. But if you can accept it now the way that it is, it will morph into something different. And you get to choose to be happy throughout.
Brilliant. So many topics in this very coherent answer. You talk about conscious parenting. I wish we could explore a bit more. You kind of speak my heart, you speak my mind, something very similar that I experienced myself. And you talk about the imperfection of our human nature and how important it is to just let go and see ourselves for who we are right now and who we want to become next second. Because the happiness happens in this very moment. And if we anchor ourselves onto the hurt of the past, or we abandon ourselves into the worry for the future, there's no room for happiness, really. There's no room for mindful living, for being here, for being present and capturing this beautiful life that unfolds, because life is only in the now. Oh, thank you so much, Zeeba. It's all so beautiful, orchestrated and articulated with you. I'm hoping that we get a chance to talk again, because I had so many other questions I wanted to ask, but time is limited.
I would love to do it again.
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you. We will definitely do it again later in the year. Towards the end, Zeeba, can you let our listeners and watchers know where can they find a bit more about you? Where can they connect with you, learn from you, work with you if they wish to?
Absolutely. They can find me on my website, zeebahealing.com. And there they will also find a dosha quiz that they can take to see which mind, body, spirit composition they have. And there are many free resources. And they can sign up for my newsletter as well. I've also got courses, and they can reach me through the contact form if they're interested and curious about working with me one-on-one for anything in particular.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Zeeba, for everything. I am really grateful for spending the time here with me, for joining this conversation, for sharing your wisdom and your heart with all of the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicoletta.